Hello everybody, pleased to meet you. Hope you're doing well. This is David with you for this How to Pass Level 3 video. If we haven't met, perhaps on FRM, I'm also an FRM instructor as well as a CFA Level 3 instructor. Also guys, I'm a Kaya instructor as well. But here today, we're going to focus of course on our CFA Level 3. So if we haven't met before, guys, great to meet you. Now, there's quite a number of key messages I want to get across in the video. But I picked out three to start us off in one moment's time. If I only had the chance to give you three pieces of advice, three tips, three things to get you started on your CFA Level 3 journey, these are going to be the top three. Before we start, just going to do a very brief introduction. Yes, so for me, my level 3 was 2003. Can you believe that? How the years go by, and I've been helping people pass exams like the CFA level 3 pretty much ever since. My FRM was 2004. So guys, I'm also a risk guy, which helps quite a lot with level 3. I'm also teach alternatives through the Kaya as well, guys. I teach that as well. So helping people pass exams, that's mostly what I do. Now, let's want to start off the video talking about the goal, talking about the main reason why we're here, of course, and all the effort you've put in over such a long period. And a big congratulations, of course, for level 2, quite a very tough exam. But I want to focus on how close your goal is, the CFA Charter, because it's not just about completing one more exam. It's about completing a whole phase, a whole chapter in your life in terms of the effort and dedication and everything else that you've put in there. And so the stakes are high. The stakes are extremely high indeed. And in the days when I completed my level 3, it didn't hit me initially what you actually achieved. It's not just passing level 3 exam. It's the culmination of a lot of work. As 2021 is the Olympic year, and the Tokyo Olympics have almost just about finished when I'm making this video, I have drawn some comparisons, guys, to in a way the dedication and the commitment and the focus it needs to get on your national Olympic team. In many ways, completing the charter is the same. You know, that you're going to need to show that same kind of resolve, resilience, especially over these COVID times, and focus and dedication. So yeah, in the same way as I admire the sporting achievements, guys, from the Olympic year, and more about that coming up as well. I do also admire the dedication, the focus it takes to get to level 3, and we're going to need to keep that going to complete the charter. So in the times ahead, if you're starting your studies here, thinking about planning ahead for CFA level 3, the purpose of this video, I want you to keep in mind the ups and downs. That guys, keep the goal fresh in mind, because it's coming, it's pretty close. Now, I mentioned about three key messages, three, you might call them drivers or factors of an effective study plan. Drivers or factors, we have a lot in level 3. We have them, guys, coming up in the equity area, factor analysis. We have them in asset allocation as well. But here we're talking about the factors, drivers of success in level 3. Now, you've already passed level 1 and 2, so you already have, and you're already aware of many of these things, but I want to make sure that you're very clear about them. Now, the first one, it's hard to pick a word actually to summarize so many things, but the word I've gone for is commitment. And when I looked at a word to try and express what I'm getting at here, other things came to mind as well, like effort, study hours or study time. Did you know, for example, that level 3 in the CFA Institute surveys requires the most study time? And you might be a bit surprised at that if you've heard that the level 2 instructors, for example, telling you that level 2 is the hardest exam, as they probably would. Well, I'm biased because I'm a level 3 instructor. I'm going to tell you different. There's motivation. I could have chosen drive to succeed. enthusiasm, definitely enthusiasm. Because where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's the will, you don't also count the hours as much as well. If you enjoy it, if you enjoy the process. I don't know about you, but are you doing level 3 because you have to, or are you doing level 3 because you want to? And guys, if you can just enjoy the process, get out of it whatever you can, see what it has to offer in terms of learning. It's going to be much easier for you. A curiosity to learn, a passion to complete this. Guys, the drive or passion to complete all this work. So I'm not sure one word can sum all that up, but what I'm saying to you here is that with the right focus, with the right attitude, with the right commitment, guys, you could do anything. You've done anything in life. So this stage in your life, you're completing CFA level 3. I'm sure there are other goals you're going to have in the future, whatever there may be, exams or more, or other areas, things you're going to achieve through work, your personal goals as well, and aspirations. So I can't underestimate the value, guys, of just the hard work and sheer determination. Now, the next key driver of success at level 3 is a bit more specific than the first one, and it is the technique. Guys, it's the technique, not for item sets, but for constructive response. You haven't been tested in this way in CFA so far. When was the last written exam that you sat? All right, so I know you've all got experience going back in the past of written exams, or nowadays typed exams, of course. But when was the last one that you did, where all you have is a blank field to complete? And also, how many questions have you practiced? Well, it could be some time since you've done that. So this brings in a whole new ball game, as they say, as far as the need to learn the technique of level 3, understand what's involved, and then practice in a timed way. And I can tell you, as a level 3 instructor over the years, that many people are unaware of what's required, and they haven't practiced or drilled it. They're going to be at a big disadvantage. And so the third one here is resources. Guys, resources. In terms of practicing, you're going to need to have the right level of resources and the right kind of instruction. You're going to need to get through all the work and gain the experience. And so what I'm going to say here is that although everybody's smart at level 3, you've passed a very tough exam level 2, it's not a level playing field, right? It's not a level playing field in terms of commitment, in terms of effort and study and motivation. And this is going to give you a massive edge, a massive advantage, having that drive and willpower to get you through the line, if you like. We can help you a lot with your technique. We can help you a lot with your getting ready for the constructive response. A lot more of that coming up. And part of the video is going to outline the ways in which we can help you, some of the resources that we have. And then getting the right package. You all study in slightly different ways. You all have your own strengths, areas that you find works for you. But it could be for level 3, you're going to have to think about 1 or 2 additional techniques, additional things to add to what's worked for you at level 2. And I guess the goal of this video, to get you started, one of my main goals is to talk through the elements of what's going to work on effective study plan. Now, I'm very aware, over the years, everyone is different, and the way you like to learn things could be different as well. The ideas that I'm going to recommend are just going to add to what you already do. Okay, everybody. So with that in mind, I hope we're ready to make a start here. One thing I like to say to all my students, you pass, then I pass. And I can tell you as an instructor that there's nothing more fantastic than hearing back from my students. Absolutely fantastic. CFA level 3, FRM, and Kaya as well. Okay, so a big goal, a big theme throughout this is understanding the challenge ahead. You have to be a level 3 instructor to really know that. A level 3, level 2 instructors, yes, they're going to help you through level 2, but specializing in level 3, that's what you need here. Hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Talked about designing your own study plan, something that's going to work for you. Now, in passing these types of exams, it's extremely competitive. So we're going to think about ways in which you can get an edge over the many candidates that are out there. So we're going to talk about the pass rates. We're going to talk about some of the kind of common misconceptions about level 3 as well, what other people might say. Particularly if you're a level 2 instructor, or if you're, I don't know, more of a general commentator. I'll tell you as my view, guys, coming in here as a level 3 instructor. I mentioned already that there are some key differences about how to approach level 3, and we've already mentioned one of the main ones is constructive response and item set. There's and here, item set there. You already know pretty much everything there is to know about preparing for item sets. There's not a lot I can teach you there. By the way, you're already pro-level studiers, but the area that we're really going to need to work with you on and to recognize there's a lot of scope here is constructed response. Now, you might be surprised. I'm not sure if you'll be surprised to realize this or to find out that amongst the candidates, and the Institute are very upfront about this, is that constructive response. How do you think candidates tend to perform on this? Well, guys, it's generally pretty poor. All right. Whereas item set, they tend to perform really good here. So it's not as if you're coming into a candidate competition where the constructive response standard is super red hot, guys. I'm saying to you, according to the Institute, it's not. And so there's plenty of scope to gain an advantage. You might say, well, why? What's the reason why the constructive response perhaps isn't that massively well handled? Well, guys, think about the nature of the CFA program being not including it. Think about the lack of. The books themselves cover the knowledge, but not the technique. So that was my number 2 technique, guys. After commitment and drive and effort, we've got to work on that technique to give ourselves an advantage. Now, the phases of learning, you know how to learn, how to study for the CFA Level 3 exam. I'm only recommending tweak it, adding, getting you to consider as your coach 1 or 2 extra things. But I know you already know how you like to study, but we just need to tailor it a little bit more. One of the themes that's coming through here will be, well, Level 3 is about words and it's about numbers. One of the reasons it's also about words is you've got a client involved. Almost every CFA Level 3 question is a scenario where you're going to have to, if it's the constructive response especially, you're going to have to recommend, you're going to have to justify and explain, you're going to have to explain to a client. Now, some of you, in my Level 3 years meeting candidates, I find that people who do that for a living, maybe you're a pension consultant, or maybe you work other institutional investors or with private clients. I used to work myself with high net worth private clients. You've got to explain stuff. You've got to put it in language they can relate to. And oftentimes in Level 3, guys, you're fast on a calculator for Level 2, but can you actually explain something in simple terms? That's what we need you to do in a way, is to step back and apply what we're doing in this way. So again, there's a bit of a learning curve in doing that and then doing it to time as well. The readings are partly wordy and partly technical, and we're going to cover a bit more detail as we come through. So guys, the slides that follow in the content, I really hope it helps you out, gives you a good start, helps your planning. Let's have a look what we've got here for you. When you look at the success rate from all those hopeful candidates that start, what's separated out the people that even get to level 3? What separated that out? Well, my own opinion over the years, it's not necessarily how smart anybody is at all. All right, because plenty of smart people don't get through level 1. I've got friends like this that really, think of themselves as smart, but what they haven't got, something they haven't got, perhaps is the staying power, is the determination, the focus, being able to apply, and in many ways, they might have those things, but for something else. All right, so maybe you're a musician, maybe you're an athlete, maybe, I don't know, you've got another hobby or interest where you're going to spend all your time and effort, and you excel at that. Guys, the people that excel at CFA and get all the way through to the charter are the people that really want to do this. You really want to do it. You really want to get this thing done. And that determination I've talked about, I can't underestimate at all here. It's very, very strong. So it wouldn't matter, in a way, if this is your passion to get your charter, if this is your goal over the next short term here, then guys, this is what this video is all about. Let me illustrate this with a quick story. So a friend of our family, their son was looking to do their CFA level 1 in 2021. Could you help them out a little bit, have a little chat to them, not to do all the instruction or anything, but a quick kind of chat. When I did that, talking to this person, they said to me, well, David, I'm prepared to do one Saturday a week, but only in a library. Right, so one Saturday a week, but only in a library. So that's all I'm prepared to put in. And I knew this particular person was a musician. All right, so for the rest of the time, their passion is that's what they love. That's what they're doing. It's as though they were kind of forcing themselves to study in this way. And we know that's not going to help you. If that's all you can put in, it's all you can commit. So to get to your charter, I want to bring back the Tokyo example as an analogy here. That to get on the Olympic team in your country for anything, one Sunday or one Saturday or one part of a weekend is not going to do it. It's really not going to do it. In the documentaries around about the Olympics, one of the sports that I'm into, that actually this next week will be 25 years me doing this particular sport, is taekwondo. So I've been doing it for 25 years. And I don't count the hours, I don't count the time, trying to improve a bit more flexibility or technique, whatever it might be. You're kind of fighting age after a while, aren't you guys? But I listened to some of the from a UK point of view, UK Taekwondo Olympic team. They were talking about the difference between motivation and commitment. And the way that they described it from their point of view was you have, say, if they had 2 training sessions a day, being an Olympian, right? 2 a day, I think for something like 5 to 6 days a week. And they said that for your first session in the day, they're pretty motivated, right? Pretty motivated for the day, have a good session. However, have a bit of a rest, and have a session towards the end of the second part of the day. By then, the motivation's waned, all right? So wouldn't it be nice not to have to do it? The motivation's almost dried up. But they said that what takes over for them, this person, was commitment. Right, so it was the commitment, the goal in mind to keep going. So when you're thinking about guys level 3, just remember, it's not necessarily the content that's going to be the challenging thing. All right, the challenging thing is going to be getting the work done, getting more work done, getting more practice, getting more experience, getting better, getting quicker, getting more effective. Mastery, guys, mastering what we're doing. So the devotion, that first driver of success, guys, the commitment one there. This is one of the main things that not everyone's going to have that we need to have. I mentioned here about the technique number 2. When was the last written or typed exam? Which is a big thing, guys. Half your exam will be in this format. Now I couldn't wait, could I, to get the some of the data up here as far as pass rates. We have a slide coming up on this, but look what the pass rates tell you. So this video is in September 2021, where the May results are out, and for that one, 42% of the candidates passed. Perhaps a little bit different with all the delays and the postponements and deferrals. That's bound to have had some effect. So that one's the lowest ever pass rate in the history of level 3. Also, I guess the switch over to CBT might be a factor coming in as well. But over the last 10 years, a bit more representative, it's been very sticky around about 53, around about half. So coming back to my main messages to you, it's not a level playing field. Yes, everyone's smart, but I guess the commitment, the understanding the technique, and then the resources that you have access, especially to questions and instructor debriefs, that's going to make all the difference. Let's look at a rather busy slide, but it's useful to see the end-to-end level 3 content. I say end-to-end, and it's also, if we focus on the client, so let's focus kind of here to start with. Let's bring in the clients. When I think about level 3, it kind of brings me back as well to my career within this kind of area, which is working with high net worth clients. The thing I love about level 3, I suppose, is how practical it is, because you're working with real life. Rather than being an abstract topic, this is real life. It's real life. It affects you, guys, your own retirement, whatever stage of life you're at. We have case studies coming in that pick up following clients through their typical journey through life, different age groups, and looking at very much a holistic financial plan for them. Now, in the old days with the CFA level 3, it was almost solely investment focused, right? I mean, you talk about investment management, but let me update you a bit more here. The questions that in the case studies are very much holistic. They're holistic. They are not just thinking about investments. We're thinking about wider in terms of retirement needs. We're thinking about insurance needs for life assurance or illness or income protection, liability insurances. So this again fits very well with my own background in financial planning, where I kind of started off my journey in finances. So it's great to kind of link some of that in here. So what can you expect when you look at the content of level 3? Well, you can expect a mixture of some wordy content where you need to sort of learn the ideas. Like, for example, there in behavioral finance. So some of these things you're going to recognize, but some really really useful to classifications in terms of ideas and behavioral finance concepts, applying them, really kind of capturing human nature, I guess is one way to think about it there. Are we all rational, as the Kaplan would suggest, or are we emotional? Are we human beings? So again, we've got plenty of ways to pick up these ideas pretty quickly, very interesting to apply them. In the exam, it's likely, whether it might be an item set question or a constructive response, but you're going to have our client scenarios. You're going to meet these clients, and you're going to work with a lot of the traits and behavioral concepts. Now, capital market expectations builds upon a lot of what you know already from CFA level 1, CFA level 2. Again, it's probably now 3/4 wordy. And there are one or two models, one or two that you're going to recognize as well, like the Taylor rule that you've seen before. So there are quite a wordy look, but the use of what we're doing here in behavioral finance and in forming capital market expectations is very practical level 3, because you're going to use all that to formulate your strategic asset allocation for your clients. And level 3 does discuss passive, semi-active, and active, and we have the whole myriad of benefits of each of these. The types of clients, we have private wealth, and we have a variety of institutions, guys. So life companies, non-life. You've got the banks and insurers, endowments and foundations, sovereign wealth funds. You're going to need to know the characteristics of each. You need to know the nuances. You need to know the issues, guys. The issues. They're kind of client markets as well, because understanding their market, understanding what's important to them, is going to help you a lot to understand the case studies as well. So here, in every case, guys, there's some theory. You learn the theory. However, the application has to be mirrored with it as well. So a lot of people talk about online in their famous forums and chat rooms. They'll say level 3, gosh, it seems pretty friendly. I'm reading behavioral, I'm reading capital market expectations. Gosh, it seems okay. And I'm guessing at that stage they haven't started to apply it yet. All right, so constructive response, item set on our courses, we integrate that all the way through. So you don't want to leave that to the review phase. You want to do that all the way through. It's very important. Now, once a plan is put in place, guys, our investment policy statement is up and running, then the idea of evaluating, monitoring, perhaps making some changes to the managers as well, and the issues around those. So this is what I mean by the end-to-end process coming through. A few highlights to mention. Number one would be things like ethics and GIPS. Now, I've talked a bit about the level of competition at level 3 being way higher. Let me ask you, how did you score in ethics? How did you score in GIPS in levels 1 and 2? Were you the kind of person that has always scored well in them? Have you always had a bit of an advantage? Well, guys, let me tell you something here. You want to look for whatever advantage you can find in level 3. We've talked about one of them being the constructive response. We're gonna really work on that with you. But the other area here, there's alpha here. All right. Yeah, there's alpha in ethics, there's alpha here in GIPS. Because a lot of people don't like it. They don't like studying it. Now, new for 2022 is the 2020 edition of GIPS. Now, there's also something that will really help us with GIPS, is that you're not going to be asked to study all of it. And that's not widely understood. But you're only asked to focus on a relatively small focused part of GIPS. And again, it's an area, guys, really going to recommend that watch our videos, look at our courses. We can help you get a bit of an advantage there as well. So let's look at the technical parts that are coming in level 3 as well. Now, we leave behind accounting, right? We leave behind accounting. Is that good for you? Is that bad for you? But what's coming back here with a vengeance is fixed income. Now, for 2022, the fixed income's been quite heavily beefed up, right? So it's been, most of it is different. One or two things are the same, but most of it is different. Asset liability management, for example, also the new credit risk reading has a lot of detail, quite technical, quite important. So again, have a think about your own background, guys, strengths and weaknesses. Is that an area that you like? Is it you're good at? We've got lots of ways that we can help you out to strengthen that and turn it into what you're going to need for level 3. Derivatives, over the years I meet people that might love it or hate it. They might say, David, I hate options. David, I hate forwards or futures or whatever, or swaps. Guys, they're all here. They're all here in level 3, but they're very practical. So what you find is that perhaps there's nowhere near as broad, but they're extremely kind of like core areas. By understanding the core areas, you'll be using one or two formulas all the time. So I think that's the same with fixed income as well, that by understanding some key concepts, some key issues, you tend to get it all, and it can really help you. Currency, a lot's repeated from level 2. The reason why currency is important in level 3 is that we were investing abroad, of course. and so there'll always be currency questions coming in. So guys, to summarize quite a busy overview of everything here, we're going to need to practice both the wordy parts and the technical parts, both the item sets and the constructed response. Any of these topics could be constructed response, and any of them could be item set. That's why level 3 takes the most time, guys. You've double the practice needed. I mentioned about the pass rates already, and that 10-year average, guys, of 53. And the most recent one, 2021, was the May exam. Of course, we have got the November still to sit. Be interesting to compare that there. But look at the number there, guys. Look at the number of candidates at level 3. Now, I can feedback some experience from myself and from candidates that I've met. And I guess I mentioned about the resources vary, about what people have had in the past. If you ask me about what the number one resources, the most important resources are going to be here, I think particularly when you get into the review phase, getting hold of our practice Q&A books, really, really, really important. Also, guys, our essay and exam writing workshops are really, really good as well, and more about those coming up as well. So if it's not about how smart anybody is, then the other 3 factors are coming in. I said about the commitment, guys. The commitment drives you in terms of activity. And all the courses that I run, I always like to kind of list out the possible resources that there are, and I kind of I'll give it you straight as to what you need to think about getting done, guys, what you need to do in terms of work. And often people are quite shocked when I kind of show what I recommend that you do. And not everyone's willing to do it, guys. Not everyone's willing to put that amount of work in. But if you want to aim high, you don't pass the exam, in my view, on the day. Guys, you kind of earn that pass through your preparation. If you've done the work, you don't have to worry about passing the exam. You can go in there and just do your stuff. You're becoming the right level through the work you've done. If you haven't done the work, though, of course, then you got to hope for a little luck on the day. This is an interesting little model, which we have included for you, called the Peter Principle. And what it's to do with? It's to do with competence, that you rise through the CFA levels where you're still competent at what's needed. All right. If you have any weaknesses, though, then each level will test you to see if you have weaknesses that are going to cause you a problem. All right. So obviously we're focusing here at level 3. The fact that you've reached level 3 must mean that in terms of accounting and financial reporting, guys, you've succeeded. You've succeeded and got through all that stuff. All that now has been left behind. There's pretty much no reporting and that sort of stuff as well. However, what are you going to? What skills and what attitudes and what attributes do you need for level 3? What do you need to be competent at, and what weaknesses might people have at level 3? Well, guys, to reach the charter, to get through level 3, number one, we've already talked about that you've really got to want it. You've really got to want to do the work. I'm not a marathon runner, but I could imagine the last phase of the marathon is probably the toughest, because that's perhaps when your resolve is going to be tested the most, and you're most tired as well. So I think over a tiring level CFA program as well, some people, it's knocked out of them. I've had enough. You've had enough, David. Guys, we need to make sure that you recharge, right? So this is one of the secrets of passing exams I found myself over the years, is that people who kind of say, I'm going to sacrifice my friends, I'll sacrifice my family, I'm going to sacrifice being happy, having fun. No, guys, that's the worst possible strategy in my view. You want to keep your spirits up. You want to recharge those batteries. You want to keep yourself happy and motivated. That's the key to it all. The key to it all. So, in a way, level 3 is testing how well you've integrated study into your life, how well you've mastered being a pro-level learner. When you come out the other side, guys, and you've got your charter, what do I kind of really recognize in people that I meet, CFA charter holders? I know what you've been through, and I know what you've been through. I know what you must have done to achieve it, the sacrifice. I know how organized that you are as well. So this last phase is going to test you. It's going to test this determination to get through. It's also going to test perhaps some of the technical skills. And you may or may not have those at the moment, whether it might be the fixed income knowledge or derivatives, because of course, isn't that the whole point to learn? The whole point to learn something new and to gain more of these things. So guys, keep the curiosity, keep the enthusiasm, keep the willpower to learn. Find your way, guys, find your way through it. It doesn't have to be my way. One thing, again, I've learned as an instructor, there's lots of ways to learn things, aren't there? So often I'll give you 3 or 4 different viewpoints on things. And that can really help. Oh, right, I get it now. So find a way that works for you. And that's often what's going to make the big difference, guys, here. Now, it's not about learning every page. All right, so what we're looking at here is speaking a language. So I don't speak very many languages at all, actually. English is pretty much it. Bit of Scottish as well, of course. I'm kind of part Scottish too. But what you're speaking here is the language of fixed income. You're speaking the language of derivatives. And so one of the ways to think about level 3, it's not about memorizing a page. This is not the idea at all. It's getting a key idea. All right, remembering a list. It's not about remembering lists and remembering pages. It's getting a key idea that can be a core idea that you can apply. And that's what the Institute do. It's a bit like a driving test. I'll put it that way. When you take your driving test, there are, in the UK, for example, there are core things you're going to be tested on. And it's the same, guys, for our level 3 as well. They want you to be able to do certain things. They want you to be able to have certain skills in this way. So when you are reviewing each of the topics, you'll notice that certain things come forward a lot in terms of the practice end of chapter questions, and the certain themes come through, and you'll find that's what to focus on rather than the small print fringe areas. Also, guys, one thing that not everyone likes at level 3, words and numbers. So we've talked about the importance of being able to take something and get the key ideas from it. Maybe it's the behavioral finance, the first reading, that you're looking at some of the behavioral concepts and definitions. Now, your task, guys, in level 3 is to take those key ideas and find them. What are the key ideas? And watching a video, watching an instructor, reading yourself, consolidating, different ways of doing it. I would recommend a bit of a blend or combination. But to get to level 3, to get past level 3, you need to be confident in yourself in researching things. It's in FRM Part 2, another exam that I teach. It's very, very wordy. It's incredibly wordy. And there are very few calculations. And as the skill of researching something, bringing out the key theme or idea, that's something that all charter holders are going to be able to have to do. And it's something that you're good at. So I want you to incorporate some reading as well as the video work that you're going to be doing as well. Now, there are some numbers. Yeah, there are some numbers as well. And then finally, guys, technique. We've talked about the exam itself. The idea it's going to be typed, it's going to have a blank screen. You're going to need to construct those answers in a limited time frame as well. And the idea of explaining to clients, putting things in an easy to understand way, being very focused in what we're doing. So why is it that some people might not pass level 3 first time round? We've seen that, guys, 42% pass first time round. My view as a level 3 instructor is these things here. Oftentimes they haven't done as much work, then they haven't plugged the gaps, they haven't worked on the weaknesses, perhaps they haven't practiced the technique enough, haven't got the right practice resources. Now, on a planning ahead point, just to leave this slide, let's go beyond level 3, beyond the charter, because there's a lot of skills and abilities that you take with you on your journey wherever you go beyond there. All these skills of speaking languages, fixed income, derivatives, we know that doesn't mean you're a specialist, but it does mean that you do have a great foundation in many of these things in your career, and it might open a number of doors. But that guy's motivation and commitment and determination, whatever you focus on, you're going to be able to achieve. Right, what do other people say about level 3? This quote here, the easiest of the 3 exams, forgive the slight hysterical laughter there. Guys, hindsight bias. This is a problem with all exams that I know you're aware of. But as an instructor, I see it all the time, and I tend to see it mostly right after the exam day, right? So all the exams that you've done in the past, let's imagine that you're reflecting that day or coming back home after your exam. What are your thoughts and feelings? Well, immediately after, I think I get contacted all the time by candidates saying, David, it was extremely tough. A lot tougher than I had imagined. I don't think I've done that well. Isn't that a very common view? And the number of people who think, particularly with FRM actually, who think they've failed is quite enormous. I don't think anyone's ever come out of the FRM exam thinking it was okay. Everyone thinks it's tough. However, of course, if it's been tough for them, it's been tough for absolutely everybody. And what I've learned over the years as an instructor is that if I'm replying to someone like this, especially if I know them, I've met them maybe on the instructor link, or I've supported them on courses, I've met them over the period. I know what work they've done. I know what they've put in. And guys, there's a kind of truism in life here, truism I found, that life is fair when it comes to these exams. And what I mean by that is, if you put this work in that I'm suggesting as your coach, you will come out the other side with the right result. So I'll often come back to them and say, well, I actually, you've done the work, and I believe you're going to get the right result. I have faith that the work you've put in will pay off. And you know what? It does. And the number of people who come back shocked, obviously pleased. But what's happened there, guys, is that these exams are tough. But pretty much everyone's going to find them tough. Now, however, months or years later, it's okay, how was your CFA level 3? Oh, it wasn't that bad, really, And this idea of filtering out, hindsight bias is a cognitive bias, the mental process of filtering out the objective and remembering just some of the things. Looking back over time, were they always sunny summers? Was everything always wonderful and fantastic, or were there also some rainy days as well? So, guys, that's hindsight bias. So when they say the easiest of the 3 exams, I definitely don't agree. The candidates are going to be tested on 2 things: knowledge and technique. And if I ever meet anybody perhaps who had a brilliant item set score, but a terrible constructive response score, well, it's not knowledge that let them down. So passing level 3, often it's not about getting any more knowledge. Isn't that a strange thing to say? When for level 2 that wouldn't be the case. So guys, level 3, if you're working on the constructive response, we can work on that in terms of technique. And this is really, really important. So to clarify, the reason why I'd say level 3 is the hardest exam is because of that. It's because of the technique aspect coming in there. The great news here is that the constructive response standard out there, guys, feedback from the Institute, It's not great. It's not great. There's plenty we can do to get an edge. We've talked about a few things here. This is a quote from this level three person. The idea of a holistic understanding. I talked a bit about applying to clients in case studies. So we're going to link in topics often in concepts in more than one topic. But give you an example would be the economic balance sheet. So guys, yeah, the economic balance sheet is something that we look at, for example, in asset allocation. The idea that it's not just financial assets and liabilities that we take account of, but it's also the idea of human capital, the idea of that you can carry on working until retirement, and the present value of that is your human capital. That's going to be useful to you in the future. Future pensions are also your accruing benefits in the future. Future expenses. So it's not just the assets and liabilities today. When we think about the economic balance sheet, we're factoring in many future benefits. So they often talk about, guys, level 3 in this way, that you're a bit like a glide path, a plane gliding in towards retirement there. And as you get older and older, as you get nearer and nearer your retirement goals, you start to be able to kind of see more clearly the benefits that are coming your way, and the expenses, the sort of lifestyle that you might want, and whether you might have where you're partly working and partly retiring. So level 3 I mentioned is very holistic and practical, and whether it's you, your family, insurances, whether it's your investments, putting all these together in a holistic way is real life. It's real life. That's why I think it's such an interesting level here. The thing about being what might be reasonably tested, talking about the core, that's where our courses can help you. In our courses, we don't just test just the main things. We do test pretty much lots and lots of fringe areas too, but we want to make sure that you've practiced the core areas especially. Now let's talk a bit more detail about what the CFA program talks about, guys, to what the Institute says here. I want to just bring in the constructive response questions here. We've got 3 types. Now, this video is for 2022 because it incorporates, of course, all the CBT. 2021 also CBT, but this is specifically bringing in, guys, the latest info from the Institute. And they've been upfront. They're talking about 3 variations of constructive response questions. Now, number 1, whenever you see, I want to make a big point about this because it does bug me a little bit here. Well, you do see mentions of essays, don't you? This is the essay. They always put constructive response or essay. Let's just clear that up immediately. There are no essays, right? So your level 3, absolutely no essays. So what do you mean then, David? Well, firstly, short answers. Oftentimes you might use kind of a bullet point sentence approach. At the end of this video, I've got an example for you to illustrate what we mean by this. For example, they might say, well, justify an above average capacity to take risk from a client with 2 reasons. Guys, you've got your first reason, perhaps your first bullet point sentence. And by way of a link to what's coming up, oftentimes you have some evidence. Very important, by the way, that all your short answers, all your typed answers must be case specific, must be question specific. If you use some knowledge from the curriculum that's not in the case study, you'll often get no marks at all because that's not what the client wanted. It has to be something that relates to the question, evidence from the question. Yeah, some sort of evidence will be in there as well, and then some sort of justification or explanation. Now, I like to call that myself the old 1-2, guys, the old 1-2, the old 1-2, if you like. You've got here, firstly, some kind of evidence from the case, making it specific, and the justification, often you might use something like a which means. And this is where many marks are dropped when we look at the constructive response technique by candidates. Let me give you a quick example here. Let's say that you're looking to justify an above average capacity to take risk, their above average risk capacity. And you might say, okay, 15-year time horizon in the case. The client has a 15-year time horizon. That's likely to be one mark out of 2. The reason is you haven't explained to the client, well, how does the 15-year time horizon relate to an above average ability or capacity to take risk? So you have to go a bit further and explain it to a client by saying, which means the portfolio has time to recover from periods of volatility. So the longer time horizon, which means the portfolio has time to recover from periods of volatility. You might say, well, David, that's so obvious. I mean, isn't it a long time horizon? Don't they know that? And the answer is, well, you know that. You're a CFA level 3 candidate, but there's a mark there for explaining what you mean, for explaining it in a way you're explaining it to a non-investment person. Guys, have you seen the movie Margin Call? One of my movies I quite like, Margin Call. And in Margin Call, it's a particularly boring movie for most of it. Not a lot happens. But there's one moment in the middle of the night where the CEO calls a meeting, and it's way into the middle of the night. There's a problem that's emerged. And the CEO sort of sits there and says, right, can someone please explain to me in really simple terms, like you would to a child or like you would to a golden retriever, just explain to me what the nature of the problem is. All right, so in a way with level 3, there are a lot of marks dropped by not briefly, in a focused way, winning the second mark to justify or explain. Guys, we've got courses on this. We can help you. We can really help you here. Number 2 type of constructive response is multiple choice. Can you believe that? Now, in the days of written or of written papers, you would circle, whether you circle A, B, or C. Maybe, guys, there are 4 options and you circle A, B, C, D, or D. Maybe there are 5 options, A, B, C, D, or E. And very often there's a follow-on there. So you might need to circle one of 5 asset allocation choices and then recommend why. So oftentimes, guys, for us as CBT, you're going to click on something, click on A, B, or C, D, or E, and then there's a follow-on there, a short answer to explain why. And then finally, new with CBT, never before until CBT, where you enter a numeric value. Now, with a numeric value, there's no other marks other than for that value, right? So there's no workings, no formulas. You just put a number in, guys. Just put a number in. So this is the 3 styles of constructive response we're going to work with you on. Remember, you've got the Prometric tutorial, which I know you know very well for level 2, of course, but for level 3, important that you start to explore it and build in some practice. Here at Kaplan, we've converted all our practice exams now to, we call them simulation mocks. So all of our simulation mocks now follow the format, all of them. They've all kind of helping you practice those last phases. So you won't hear as much about practice exams, but you hear a lot about simulation mocks. So the themes that we're talking about from the very first, those messages are coming through loud and clear. I really hope so. That the practice and apply is double the work than level 2. Why is it double the work? Because you've got item set and you've got constructed response. Now, over the years, since my CFA studies, I've studied things where the resources were far less. Let me give you just a couple of examples here. One of them actually was the energy risk professional, and also mentioned FRM. One other one recently in the last year was climate risk. Guys, the sustainability and climate risk as well. Now, for exams, especially like the ERP and the SCR, guys, there were no courses, there were no Q banks. Pretty much all you had was the material. Guys, all you had was the reading. So over the years as a coach for level 3, what I'm going to say to you is it's important that you do also include some reading as well, because isn't the job, all the jobs that we're involved in, all the skills that we have as a CFA charter holder, researching, investigating, learning, assessing, having the new ideas, the curiosity to read and to pick up on things. Guys, it won't matter what the content is, that your career is throughout your working life. You're going to need these skills, the skills that you do have. So for those people that say, I didn't have to read the material, well, what was the point doing the whole program if you didn't read anything? Surely it's about taking away skills and abilities. So by reading behavioral, guys, by watching the videos, by looking at the slides and the examples, by combining all these things, by researching them, you are applying and practicing, and then making sure as you go along you have the realistic typing out your answers for the essays, the older item sets we've talked about as well too. Now putting it into a program. This is something that I know you're going to recognize, and you'll have your own variation. But if I was looking at the optimum stages here would be a learning phase, a review or revision phase. That kind of, it used to say May is for mocks in the days of only one exam per year. A month of mocks, May is for mocks. And we have our mock simulations, of course, now at May and November time as well, of course, before the exam windows. And the first controversial thing I'm going to hit you with, if I haven't said anything too controversial so far, but the first controversial thing I'm going to hit you with is that I need you to do all the practice questions that are out there. Get all the learning from what's available, and that's going to mean here both in terms of what we offer, in terms of Kaplan, and in terms of the Institute end of chapter questions. And I would go into some of the blue boxes too. In many of our materials, guys, here at Kaplan Level 3, we do automatically incorporate a lot of the examples too. So we will have our version of it, but it'll be relatively close. But it's so important though to do the end of chapter questions. And also as you move through the phases, guys, coming on our review or revision courses on demand or live as well, you're going to be provided with new questions and new practice. And one of my main goals, guys, to tell you about is what that involves and includes, because that they've really made available online what previously was only available, for example, on a 5-day course in London that we used to run in London. So the great news about on demand, the exciting thing about this now is that you've no time limit. In London, a 5-day course, it's a packed course, have to travel somewhere to come on a live course like that. Now, being on the internet, guys, either live or on demand, especially on demand, you get far more than a week's worth of help, far more than a week's worth of questions, and it's extremely useful. Also, with the Institute, of course, guys, the whole ecosystem they have for you as well in terms of practice and item sets as well. Into the CFA, their practice exams or any mocks they have, of course, as well worth doing. And I've talked about new for CBT is all our old practice exams. They've all been upgraded into proper mock simulations with the new formats. Really, really important that you get a chance to do those in the right formatting, simulating the real exam. So just to hit you with this one, you might say, well, David, I didn't need to do the Institute questions to pass level 2. All right, so David, I didn't need to do that to pass level 1 either. I got away that wasn't in my strategy. Why should I change a winning strategy? Well, guys, here's my message to you: is you're competing. You're competing with the Olympians here. All right, you're competing with people who are very, very motivated, who will do it all. All right, you are, and again, as our students, I want to give you that guidance. I need you to step up. I need you also to make sure that you've covered both in this way, because the where do the questions come from? In where do they come from? They come from very similar kind of themes coming through with the Institute one. So how do you succeed? How do you make sure you're on the right side of that 42%? Guys, you've got to start early. You've got to start early. You've got to practice as you go along. And as a goal, we'll talk more about goal setting and planning. What I tell my students, I'm telling you guys as my students as well here. As a goal, you really want to try and have completed the CFA Institute end of chapter questions before the review phase. All right, before the review phase, because on the review phase we're going to give you new Q&A. All right, so there's a massive benefit here. You're going to receive a whole new set of practice, which is going to be requiring a good bit of time to get through. Remember, all the debriefs, they're all online now, so you can get full instructor debriefs. These courses, really useful. Right, so the constructed response is the new part of level 3, as you know, compared to level 2. We've talked a bit about how you can get more experience of this. Our courses go a long way, but a good starting point, this is kind of a planning video, the Prometric tutorial, and all our QBank as well as the mock exam simulations, they're really going to help you. Let's talk about the exam itself. Now, for level 3, if you haven't, I'm sure you have had a bit of a look around and research on the Institute web pages, of course, and you'll find a bit more information like this. But let's make sure you're happy with how it's going to work out for you. So when we have our 2 hours and 12 minutes, our 120 plus the 12, so 132 minutes for the first session, which of course is again, they're calling it essay format. It always jars on me that little bit there. No essays here. Remember the three types of question: the short answer question, bullet points, sentences. We're going to see, and we'll show you those. Multiple choice as well, where you have to click on one of the 3, 4, or 5 answers, then justify, and then also the numeric value type questions as well. Now, the number of questions in that section will vary. They say here between 8 and 11 questions. So that means that the number of minutes will vary per question. You know, you're going to get 10 or 8 or 11. You're going to get some shorter questions and some longer ones as well. In general, I would say compared to the old days of level 3, when it was a 3-hour exam, 180 minutes, that the question length a little bit less. It wouldn't be unusual in level 3 to have some real stonker questions, if you like. A big pension question, 36 minutes. That can happen in the old level 3. Perhaps not quite as likely to have that long. But we don't know. They can surprise us. Anything can be either format, or they could be both formats as well, remember. So you could get any topic in each session. Now, in that first session, I put here time constrained. Time constrained. This is one of the issues that can cause a real problem if you're not practiced. Where we need to end up, guys, here is that you're drilled, you're ready, you're practiced, you know the technique well. You're also relaxed and comfortable in the exam, that you can just perform and do what you're trained to do in this way. Also, you've also got a game plan. you've got a strategy and a game plan, we're going to work with you as well. Over the years, the game plan I've found makes all the difference, absolutely all the difference. Who isn't nervous? Who isn't a little bit tense before it? The exam experience can get to you, it can get to some people. Guys, well, we've got ways can help you there. One of the biggest tips we're going to talk about is playing to your strengths. Play the exam your way. I'm a great believer in this one. So personally, I'll almost never start on the first question. I'll find a question that's a warm-up question for me, one that I can start with, one that I can get some good marks on the board. I can win back some time as well, and start to relax and feel pretty good, and maybe even start to hopefully enjoy and do well in the exam. So guys, time management, we're going to work with you all the way through our courses on a timed basis, to make sure that you do that. And you might find that you're too quick and you're missing lots of marks, you're dropping your explanations, you're not using the technique. You don't want to finish early and have half the marks. Guys, we want the optimum. Now, over the years, I've worked with candidates, who've told me that they've really aced it. We talk about just generally their study techniques and what they used. And so, guys, to feedback some of these ideas, and I remember one lady telling me that, that she planned to write a little bit more, to show a little bit more detail, to explain that a little bit better, but being very careful to manage to a time budget. So time budgeting, having a strategy is going to be everything. Now, whereas in the afternoon, the old afternoon, the item sets, you can probably bake a cake. Not that I could bake a cake at all. I'm not very good at that sort of thing. Because you've time to do quite a bit more here, and I think it's partly because you're so fast in the first session. You sort of speed up so much that you can handle item sets now even faster than you can at level 2. So guys, the item set not typically is time constrained. That's the feedback that we get from our candidates. Again, 2 hours 12 minutes, so together the timing's the same between the two. Now, the way that the questions work, the Institute's been quite upfront in level 3, saying that it's 44 questions overall, each with 3 minutes, giving 132 minutes. Where they're not so prescriptive is how many in the mix are going to be 4 questions and how many going to be 6. And one thing we can say though is that the trend is to have more and more shorter item sets, more like the 4s there. So this is an example where you might have, for example, 2 of the 6 questions and then 8 of the 4, giving you overall 12 plus 32, giving you the 44 there. We've already talked about essay always jars me a little bit here. It just shows you, the misunderstanding, about the constructive response. Here, though, the slide does clarify that there could be these calculation questions, that numeric value. Now, the numeric value questions themselves just require a number, of course, but there are other calculation questions that forms part of short answers as well. So the Institute have been quite upfront about this. They're saying that you don't need to show a formula. However, if you end up getting the number wrong and you show your steps, you show the steps along the way, then you're more likely to get some partial credit. So for all the years, we've always recommended that within the time you have to answer, just show the steps that you're putting down there can actually help you plan your answer as well. And should you make a little mistake, then you're getting partial credit as well too. However, if you've got to monitor your time progress, if you're behind time, then you need to make sure and adjust to the time that you have in this way. So there's our multiple choice, and there's our explain and justify. Now we have got some examples of this at the end of this slide briefing I want to go over with you as well. This thing about surprising questions. Do you expect to recognize every question? No. Guys, no, you shouldn't expect to recognize every question. These are going to be things you have, some questions that are obviously brand new. But you will recognize the content. Follow our program. You'll be very unlikely, guys, there to not to recognize the content. Typically, they're going to test the core ideas. So if you haven't read it, if you haven't taken the time to put any effort into even being close to the content, then yes, it's going to be extremely surprising. You won't recognize very much at all. Very important, guys, that you do take the time to learn the material as well. We can help you with the videos, but importantly, do your reading as well. Now, if there are any arguable questions, well, one nice thing about level 3 I found over the years, let's say they make a bit of an error in the way that they've created a question. What I mean by an error, I mean by they don't have a tight question where there's only perhaps one or two possible ways to answer. Very occasionally, the creative CFA charter holders and CFA level 3 candidates like yourselves will come up with a valid alternative approach. And you can always see that in the old days because the Institute would acknowledge that in the discussion of the examiner answers. It can kind of see there that there were more than one acceptable way approach that scored. So the graders, what the graders are there for, to give you credit for a well-justified approach. Right, so coming back to a similar slide, but hopefully now bringing it all together, how to approach the material, bringing it all together at this stage. The learning phase, what I'm recommending, guys, as your coach to pass level 3, you got to aim high in terms of activities. You got to aim high in terms of volume of practice. Practicing just Kaplan alone, I recommend we need to incorporate those end of chapter questions, CFA Institute end of chapter questions. Again, lots of ways to learn. We're talking about the reading, the videos, of course, the live courses, the on-demand courses. Lots of ways to achieve that, to help or to blend that suits you best. With the review and revision, again, the practice continues. And important that you get the new resources. That's the key message I give you there. The review and revision phase, if you come on one of our courses, like the whether it might be a 3-day live review, or in the old days a 5-day live revision, is now the more than 5-day on demand. So yeah, the on demand course giving you far more than we could ever fit into 5 days. And getting access to the extra questions and the practice, highly recommended. Remember, you're practicing as well by typing. So in the old days, when you're going through questions for level 2, you guys do it on paper, there's no problem. Here, really important that you actually physically start typing and constructing the answers. Now, the work we give you on the 3 or 5 day or on demand is actually a lot more than that. All right, so you can't get it done in that time. So I would normally say you want to give yourself plenty of time in that phase to complete the work, even before getting to the mock season. A mock's kind of a month out typically. May is for mocks. So you want to give yourself plenty of time. Book yourself the review or revision or on demand whenever suits you. On demand, so easy, to fit in, of course. And what you'll have achieved, guys, when you get towards the end there, the level of work you've done, the practice that you've done, the resources that you've had, you've hit all the boxes that I've talked about. Now we're going to have a look at a question to finish off, and in the old days, I say about old now, 2018 and earlier, the Institute used to publish the old morning exams. So we've got an example from an old morning from 2018, question number 10, and that comes towards the end of this video. One thing to mention about your exam, level 3 exam, is that in the constructed response portion, you'll get the number of minutes per each question. Right, the minutes means marks, of course. So we saw 132 minutes, 132 marks, split between 8 to 11 questions. They're going to vary the number of minutes, but what they don't show you, what they won't show you for our exam, will be the number of minutes per part. I'm not going to give you the amount per part here because we've got part A. So you'll be told, for example, in 2018 you had parts A, B, and C. But you can kind of see there roughly, when you look at the whole, roughly it's going to be split a third. So that's where you get the 6 minutes from. Very important that you do manage your time like we've been talking about. I'm going to come back to this question. Now, let's talk about the graders. Let's talk about the CFA grading process. Your scripts, they are going to be evaluated against, I feel like they're grading keys. When we call that a model answer, that always grates quite a lot as well, because there isn't, in a way, just one way of saying something. So a model answer, and very often times you'll see in a CFA grading for those past exams, for example, in the morning, you'll see there's quite a variety of answers that would have scored. So this is a great thing to realise that if you can justify, and remember, guys, we talked a bit about the old 1-2. Number one, in your answers, you've got to incorporate evidence. Number one, and then in number two, the old 1-2, you're going to need to justify. And just briefly explain your point. Just putting 2 words or 3 words of evidence is not enough, because the person you're explaining to is not so much the grader. You're the advisor to the client. All right, you're meeting a client, you're looking to do this for the client, you'll be using the client names and client headings, you're recommending to the client. This is what a lot of people don't get about level 3, and that's where they're dropping the marks, oftentimes are unaware of the technique that's required. So if you're writing an essay, you're writing too much and you're wasting time. If you're writing 1 or 2 words, you're not writing enough. And we've got to get the right blend, guys, for you. Make sure you finish the exam with a good meaty answers, showing the proper explanations, short and sharp and focused. Now, as part of the support we give you here at Kaplan, we do have access to some graders, and one of the ways we do that is through our constructive response / essay writing workshop. So that, again, that's there. It's online. You can do it wherever you are in the world. But what we do there is that you have a go at some questions, have a go at some of these questions in advance, and then you submit them and get some feedback prior to our program. And you do some afterwards as well. So getting some feedback. Everyone wants it at level 3. We have this as well with our that's our essay writing workshop I mentioned there, the feedback. With our on-demand or live courses, you can watch the instructors talk through good answers, talk through what's going to score for you, how to approach it. So you're getting the benefit in both aspects there coming through. Remember, guys, the on-demand or live review phases where you're applying everything in that second part of the learning. Now, I want to illustrate some of this, some common misconceptions about level 3, particularly about the constructive response. Is it about just downloading what you've remembered here? So let's question this to start with. Number one, is it just about remembering it all? Well, guys, definitely not. All right. So in fact, if you just recall things, it's likely you're going to get very few marks at all in the constructive response. They don't want that at all. What they want is you to help a client. All right, it's got to be specific. Yeah, specific to the client. So let me give you a quick example, not on the slide here. Benefits of a trust. So we're in the estate planning area here. Benefits of using trusts. Now, there are lots of benefits of trusts. For example, avoiding probate. The long delayed probate, drawn out probate can take months of a delay before your beneficiaries receive any help or support. Also, guys, very public processes, probate, very public. Also, there's no protection from creditors if you don't use a trust. So within the particular case study, there'll be clues as to what the client wants. What does the client want and need? And so what you're providing here is a solution. Okay, this is solution selling. It's solution selling. You need to be specific about what they want. You've been on any sales courses that talk about solution selling, and this is very important. That find out what they want and then justify how this meets their needs. So also talked about evidence and using evidence to support what you're talking about as well, using the names. We're going to go talk a lot more about the answer formatting, bullet points, and particularly bullet point sentences. The old 1-2, talk a lot more about that, as I mentioned as well. How you manage your time per question in the exam as well. How you're going to make up some time, things to watch out for, talk a lot more about that as well. And again, being guided by the number of minutes and the amount to show them as far as their workings go. A 12-minute question, you're going to have to show a lot more to earn the marks than, say, a 3-minute question, guys, too. So just to illustrate this with a quick example here that I talked about before, justify an above average capacity for risk and give 2 reasons. Now, typically here, there'll be 2 minutes per each of these reasons, 2 minutes per reason. And a lot of candidates drop marks here, but by just not explaining themselves well at all. They might say, well, long time horizon. Now, long time horizon hasn't really been quite specific about the evidence. Perhaps it could have been improved by saying a 15-year time horizon. But if you want to get the extra mark, typically you need to explain what that means to a client. So a 15-year time horizon, which means the portfolio has time to recover from periods of volatility. Guys, which means the portfolio has time to recover from periods of volatility. You've actually explained it to a client, the relevance of that evidence of that point. Let's say they can save. And one of the key things in client scenarios to check out will be their income and outgoing position as a private client. For example, if they have a positive surplus, meaning they can save, well, what it means, guys, here is that they're not requiring to draw down from the portfolio in terms of income, that the portfolio can be more geared towards growth. Right, I'll run that past you one more time. So the fact that they have a higher income than living expenses means they can save, which means the portfolio can be geared more towards growth assets, because they're not requiring to draw down from the portfolio. Now, however, if you have a client where they're having a shortfall in income, they're going to have to draw down from the portfolio. That's going to constrain their attitude, their capacity for risk, as we're going to have to provide a lot more income producing assets. So guys, what we're starting to talk about here is technique. We're starting to talk about how you can frame your answers for the client. I talked about earlier on in this video who does best in level 3, who finds it easiest to start with, are people who have to explain things to clients, where you're used to explaining things in a non-technical way. The follow-on marks are often the easiest. They're the ones that are being dropped. So guys, a lot of chance to practice this. We're going to work with you in this area. So the grade is be guided by how much to write by the number of minutes. For years and years and years, I've always been one of those instructors who would advise you to show your workings, to explain. And within a time constraint, yes. As long as you can keep to your time. The minute you start to go over, you go into essay mode. Well, you're in danger. Yeah, you're in danger going to essay mode. Not only are you going to go over this question, well, the rest of your times are going to be out as well. And this is where the practice comes in. All the courses we run, we're going to have the time clock on there to get some feedback as how you're doing. If you finished way early, let's check out your answer and see if you've got enough in there. Have you missed out some of the important parts? Guys, this is a technique. This is a process that you can get really good at. Now, a bit of controversy here, but I think it's useful. This is what I would always cover. I'm covering in my How to Pass Level 3 video. Let's call it as it is, okay? How do you outperform in the constructive response? What's the standard like? How do you outperform in the item set? What's the standard like? Well, let's start off in the item set firstly. The standard's good. You guys, you all know, you're level 2 passers. You all know everything about item sets I can ever begin to talk about. You know it already. You're already pro level. How can you outperform there? Guys, more. Having done more. The people that are sitting the exam, how many will have done the same work that you'll have done, that we'll have done? How many will have done the CFA Institute end of chapter questions plus the resources that we have ourselves as well? That double whammy, if you like. And so, guys, the experience that you're gaining, you've earned it, right? You've earned that outperformance in the item sets there. Now, if you just, for example, ethics and GIPS may be alpha areas. Did you work on ethics as well? Did you wing it or chance it? Did you work on GIPS? Over the years, I've met people who didn't study it and wish they did. All right, did no work on ethics and no work on GIPS. But of those 44 questions, guys, there it is. There it is. Sorry, here we go. Yeah, of those 44 questions, if we have some ethics and GIPS in there as well, aren't they just as valuable as everything else? In a way, because they might be the marginal areas that other people find tough, they can be perhaps the most valuable. So, personally, I quite like GIPS. All right, mind you, I'm a bit of a nerd, of course, but I quite like GIPS, and I quite like ethics as well as a study area. I teach ethics with Kaya. I teach it with CFA. I get a double whammy of ethics. Perhaps why I like it. And I want you to like it as well. I want you to look to see where you can outperform in every area. However, if you work solely on knowledge, if you work solely on item sets, you're going to end up with a fantastic score in that area. And maybe you've done nothing in the constructive response. That can happen. If anyone's in that position watching this video, we can work with you. We can solve the technique area for you, and it won't require more knowledge, guys. It won't require your knowledge is far good enough. We can work with you on your technique if anyone's in that position. Now, the minimum passing score is never released. There's a lot of debate and conjecture, estimation as to what that might be. But you can see why. For many years, if you made a case for a minimum passing score around about 60 or 61, something like that in the older days, you can see that's quite a strong case. But what we're getting at here is whatever the passing score is, we obviously don't know. But whatever it is, guys, here, there's a lot of scope, an awful lot of scope to work with you on your constructive response. And it's not me saying that that's not well answered. The Institute, quite open about saying that. So guys, I can understand why that is. We talked about that it's not something that is is in the program until level 3. Now, on the actual day itself of the exam and the exam itself, on our review and revision on demand live courses, we're going to work with you a lot on on technique, and it's especially important for level 3. The hardest way to handle an exam, I've learned from my exams over the years, for me, the hardest way is to do it in sequence, do it consecutively, because I might not be ready for question number 1 or question number 2. When I first look at that question, I'm not warmed up, I'm not ready for it. Whereas if I start with one that I'm strong on, I can win back some time, gain some confidence. And some of the later questions will often prompt answers too. So over the program we work with you on, you'll find your own way, you'll find your own method. Over the years, some people say, David, I start at the end and I work the other way, or you find your own way that works for you. Personally, I'm going to start with a strong question, win back some time, relax in the exam. Exam becomes a lot easier. We've talked about the plan, we've talked about the phases and the timing. You'll have your own way you want to do it. Do you like to read yourself? You like to watch the videos? A combination of that as well. We have so many variations that you can choose from. I guess with the pandemic, what's changed has been the choice of options has increased. One of the things that's really I'm quite excited about that's really changed is the idea of on-demand versions of everything, whether it might be kind of in the instruction stage. Yeah, the instruction stage, guys, and also in the review stage. I'll tell you why I'm quite excited about this is because usually when you're running a live class over the years, time's short. It's very short, isn't it? You'll know that. Many of you will know that as to what you can cover, and you cover what you can. You cover what you can. Whereas if you take away the time limitation, you can really cover extremely thoroughly, everyone benefits in that way. So, for example, the new on-demand review I mentioned already for level 3, the London face-to-face when I was running these 5 days is what it is. 5 days when I run them, whereas now the on-demand versions longer than that. You know, you can fit in more. You're not rushing to finish. You can be really, really thorough. We've got a whole team of instructors. We bring in specialists for every area. I'm a risk guy. Running the FRM, you'd expect that. I'm also a bit of an alternatives guy as well. If you want a GIPS session, we're going to bring in someone with the extra GIPS CIPM qualification, of course. We're going to bring in some specialists. What this slide is talking about here, though, practice, practice, practice. We're not going to just leave it until the simulations. We want you to start constructing constructive response or at the very start as well. So you know how to study. The suggestions that I've been making are just to add in a bit more, think about extra areas, revise, adapt your plans. One of the behavioral models is called the adaptive markets hypothesis. Guys, it's in behavioral. The adaptive markets hypothesis is the idea to survive, you've got to adapt. Well, guys, to survive level 3, you've got to adapt and change a little bit the way you do things. And one of the new areas I wanted just to signpost here, yes, you've got, of course, the Schweser notes, going to be really helpful for you in some of the more technical areas to keep quite focused on the exam. So fixed income would be an example of that one. Fixed income, a lot more achievable going by the Schweser notes, especially if you've got a few weaknesses there, I'd recommend. Also goes derivatives as well, options, very, very useful to get some easier ways to think about it and to learn them as well. Of course, having more than one source is useful too. Schweser notes, guys, videos also help you as well. I mentioned the CFA end of chapter. Yeah, end of chapter questions, going to be vital that you've gone through those as well. Absolutely vital. Now the then end of chapter questions here. For the on-demand review products, I wanted just to signpost some really important resources here. Number one, the mind map summaries and the Q&A book. Now, in the review phase, a lot of candidates might not know about this, and you're missing out on a tremendous source of practice questions and review summaries. So, if this was the only product, that you bought, guys, this one here is giving you enormous level of practice across item set and constructive response at the exam standard. Really, really good. With the live version, it's going to be a 3-day. The on demand, more than 5 days. The instructor videos, giving you a refresher of the main areas, and then the instructor debriefing all the questions, explaining, having someone with you, running through how to answer the questions, building also on the technique. Really, really useful. And you can have this, guys, here for the learning phase, in the classroom phase, if you like, and you can learn whenever suits you. Now, the practice in level 1 and level 2, you do hear a lot of the instructors, level 1, level 2 instructors. Obviously, I'm a bit biased being a level 3 instructor, but oftentimes it's practice, questions, as much as to say that's it. Whereas at level 3, because of the wordy nature of it, you're gonna get perhaps less calculations, and it is important to do a combination of reading as well. And I've talked a bit about the importance of reading, even right up towards the end. Keeping it kind of in the short-term memory. Do you find in the week before the exam, you kind of turn into exam mode when you can take it in a lot more? Guys, you can really take it in a lot more. So why not utilize what you're good at and keep the reading going? Of course, there's lots of ways to recap and consolidate that works for you, whether it might be the videos, the classes, the materials, but keep quite close to the material, guys. That's my advice. It's the best hedge against something coming up you think you haven't seen before as well. So the final month, May is for mocks, or November too nowadays, where you are simulating and practicing. But again, personally, I'd keep a blend going as well. The nearer you get to the exam, though, the last week or so, guys, stick to the core material. Don't try and learn the fringe. Stick to the core. It's not about a particularly wide curriculum here at level 3. It's more, can you do the core of each area? And that's where I would stick to the 90-10 approach. If you knew 90% of each topic area, that's way more than you need. There's no benefit in trying to get all of it. Get through to the 90% in every area. That's much more than enough. Now, a brief look at the material. You'll find the material pretty interesting. We've had a look already at the study journey all the way through, starting at behavioural, of course. And many of the topic areas are summarised under one heading, portfolio management, like behavioural, guys, and private wealth, institutional, etc., asset allocation, trading, performance evaluation. They all come under the heading there of portfolio management. New for 2022, or when I say either going to be revised in some way or brand new. So fixed income's been heavily revised for 2022, and it's technical. It is quite technical. And we are going right the way back to the start with yields and duration. It really takes you, from those early days. So my advice to you guys is to assess, where you're at with fixed income. Is it something that you work with regularly? Are you a pro level? Are you someone who's done a little bit in the past or needs a lot more work? Give yourself the time and also give yourself the resources. So guys, on our courses, we can accommodate that. We can accommodate because we do build from the basics. And build that up as well. Also, of course, you've got Instructor Link, which we haven't talked too much about. If you're someone that recognises, well, a little bit area to really work on, perhaps we can guide you and give you some extra direction, help as to how to strengthen any particular area you want to work on. Also, guys, new for 2022, the private wealth, all the taxation material, that includes the tax and the estate planning, also concentrated stock as well. You mustn't use old materials. All right, so it's changed too much to use anything old. You'll be studying out of date stuff. Private wealth, the taxation, I haven't called it that technical. I don't think it's massively technical, but it does incorporate a little bit of fixed income in places as well too. Now, I'm a risk guy. I mentioned already that I teach the FRM. The word risk is pricking up a little bit everywhere. Here, there's a new risk case study in level 3 for institutions. Very, very interesting, of course, but I would say that. But it is something that's new. We have 3 case studies altogether in that case study area. You've got the 2 for institutions. So this is an institutional case study for risk, and there's one for institutional portfolio management as well, and then you've got one for private wealth too. So the case studies apply the concepts covered earlier on, and the case studies, I guess, might be the closest things to some of the questions you're going to see in the exam. They're pretty much application. So guys, we've got on-demand videos to help you talk through the issues and illustrate how it all works in those case studies. Now, not everyone's favourite. I quite like it though. I've done some work on GIPS myself. The new GIPS is changed for 2022. We've got the 2020 version. But the best news, I guess you're going to like, you're not tested on the whole thing, right? You need to be help us guide you there through the studies, only on a small amount of it. So the thought of studying the whole of GIPS, that might be a lot. It's not. It's only quite a focused part of it. Now some key takeaways from this slide. I'm looking for alpha. I'm looking for ways to get ahead above the other candidates, if you like. Number 1, I'm going to say ethics. Look at the weighting on that. Look at the weighting on that, guys. And many people won't study it. Doesn't that seem crazy to you? The chance to outperform in ethics. By the way, this year ethics does include GIPS as well too, in there as well. And I'm also going to mention, guys, here fixed income too. Look at that, 15 to 20, pretty high coming in on its own. So as a technical area, very, 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 very important too. Right, let's have a look at a few quotes. Starting off with the successful quote here. I think the key thing for me looking at this, if you finish all your study plan with pretty much a month to go, then what you've done is you've already completed the review phase in my mind. So May is for mocks. It means you've already had 2-3 weeks working on that revision phase, where you have been practicing too. So that kind of last period, there's plenty of mocks and areas to consolidate with in that way. Practice. On the unsuccessful side, unfortunately, you do meet people where they practice perhaps more like level 1 or level 2, didn't do any constructive response, didn't actually write anything out or type anything out that much, didn't get any feedback, didn't come on the review courses, didn't get the extra questions, didn't put as much work in. I saw a video on YouTube recently, and it was kind of like I don't know, it's kind of like a learn from me type thing, whereby don't make the mistake that this person made, whereby they got increasing levels of work in level 1 and 2, and then slackened off for level 3 was the kind of summary of what happened to this person. And that was the message she was trying to put across, this lady, that don't do what she don't believe or listen. Don't listen to others that say level 3 is easy. Don't think you can slacken off and get through. We've talked about that. So my advice here is, when they say there were surprise questions, why? What do you think? You've seen them before. Do you think you've seen the questions before? Isn't that quite arrogant in a way if you assume you've seen the question before? Guys, you're tested on the material. They don't repeat the questions. All right, so these are going to be often questions you've not seen before. The content you'll have seen, but the questions themselves. So yes, it's very unusual, very unlikely that there are fringe areas. They tend to test the core, like in any kind of driving test. So my advice, the best hedge against this is to keep close to the material and keep some reading going all the way up through as well, especially in the last 2 weeks, guys, because that's when you can remember it the most. Now, I mentioned about the guys with the instructors are here to help you as well. I'm one of the instructor team. We have a whole team, and I mentioned the idea we have of topic specialists. I don't teach level 2. I don't teach level 1. We have specialists at level 2 and level 1 as well, and we bring them in as well. So for the on-demand videos, we've brought in people who specialize in certain things. I've talked about me being a risk guy. Guys, I teach FRM, I teach Kaya for alternatives. Really helps me for those areas of level 3, add some value in those areas. And that's what we do. We've brought people in to help you, adding some value as well. Now, as far as the learning phase goes, remember you've got live or you've got on demand. Depending on your time zones, depending on what you prefer, we actually find in real life that only a small proportion of people actually are available to watch it live or want to watch live. Often they're watching the recordings. Hence the growth in our on-demand offerings, especially with COVID and with lockdowns as well. And I mentioned the great benefits I found here is you've time to get the coverage. Oftentimes when you're live, it's very tough. You want to kind of squeeze a bit more in, and it can be quite challenging to do that for everybody. If you sat through 3 hours or 3.5 hours, that's tough going. Here on demand, we can make sure we pre-prepare things in a way that you get everything exactly as you want it as well. So for instruction and for review, so easy. Watch it wherever you want. Whatever format that you want as well. In both cases, you have got links to the instructors through the instructor link coming in as well. So when you look at the range of resources that are out there, I want to also just highlight, we've talked about, guys, too, in terms of the CFA resources too. And at the end of chapter questions, their online ecosystem, very, very important, guys, to use what's out there. What you're going to find, though, the nearer you get towards the exam, once you're competent in something, let's say it might be fixed income, so you're competent in a technique, well, that technique, you've practiced it perhaps more than once, that might not be what you're focusing on in that final period, looking more maybe at your weaker areas. So as you get towards your exam, you can target those areas that your results are telling you, yourself, that you want to really work on as well. Mentioned about the planning as well. Let's talk about the activity feed. It's one or two changes that you might not be aware of. Now, you can tailor your schedule, guys. You can tailor the order that you do things, your study plan and strategy. You can rearrange it in the activity feed so it will feed you the next timing for things in the next areas. You can feed things, you can plan things in your own way. When I study for my exams, I'll pretty much never follow the order in which things are given to me. All right. Another tip that I found so useful. Last year, most recently, I studied the SCR, guys, the the climate risk and sustainability at one of the new GARP exams. And I made a point to start with the risk material, right? No surprises there, of course. Yeah, but I started with the risk material, which was halfway in. I didn't want to start with the science. I started with the risk stuff. It's the same when you're looking at level 3. Look at the topic areas. What do you work with? Maybe you work with alts. Maybe you work with clients. Maybe you work with pensions or institutions. Maybe you specialize in asset allocation, or maybe you're an evaluation person. You can start, or maybe you're fantastic at ethics and GIPS. Guys, you can start wherever you like, but important things is momentum to get through it. So you can tailor that feed to what works best for you. Instructor link, keep in touch with us. All right, ask those questions. It tends to be used by a select fewer percentage. It tends to be used heavily by a small number when it's there for all of you. So you want a hand, you want to help, you want to keep close to the instructor to get some guidance. We want to hear from you. That's what we love, because it keeps us close to what's going on as well too. Of course, you've got in your portal the Q bank. By the way, the portal, guys, does have a split between the item set and the constructive response, as you would expect. Notice that we're not calling them practice exams any longer, right? So May is for mocks, and November too, because these now are all the simulations. So they've all had the simulation makeover and been made sure that they fit with how you're going to sit the exam itself. So we've had some feedback since the first CBT cohorts have gone through, and it's been pretty close to the simulations that we've designed and developed. Now, I talked as well about the review, guys, the extra review materials that you're getting there as well. Very important for the review, whether it's the on-demand or whether it's the online. Very, very important that you get hold of the extra questions we've talked about, and the mind maps and the instructor videos coming in as well. Have it live or have it on demand. Yeah, this sort of summarizes the last phase. So if you asked me to link back to the big three drivers of passing, on this slide here has a lot of it when you're looking at it here. The must-have mind maps, guys. A lot of people find that so useful. That the must-have workshop questions. That's more than 5 days worth. Far more than 5 days worth there. And to have the instructor debrief videos, the instructor reviews, bringing in the specialists, working on the constructive response questions, that would be on my list for certain. But did you also know, guys, that we have a 1 day, right? So this is a 1 day follow on from this, and this again is normally 3 weeks out to the exam, that kind of time scale. Which is an online essay writing workshop. And a lot of people might not be aware of this, but the idea, guys, is that there are graders allocated to those on this course where you do submit your scripts, right? So you're going to get a chance for a number of scripts to be evaluated and get some feedback. As well as the course covering, again, very focused instruction, very focused tips and coaching, building upon what you already know, of course. I guess the extra thing we're getting here is going to be the feedback from the graders. And most importantly, quickly, in time to learn, pick up some extra marks, pick up some ideas coming in here. May is for mocks, November's for mocks as well. Here's our mock simulations we've been talking about too. Now, to finish off the video, I know we're almost there. We have an example for you from 2018, just by way to illustrate this. Illustrate with some evidence, David, of course. So the idea of technique, reading the question, looking at the case, planning your answers, checking the number of minutes available, number of marks, all these things you do a lot of with us in our review phases. Right, so we return, guys, here to 2018 actually, and this is question number 10. We're only going to get part A though here, and this question is actually from the asset allocation part of the curriculum, asset allocation. And it's to do with rebalancing. Now, a bit more about this question coming up. The first thing we're going to say is, for our exam, we're not going to be given the 6 minutes. All you're going to be given here is for the whole question. And back then in 2018, by the way, I mentioned this was an 18-minute question. So although they don't give it you directly, you can easily see, we'll see that roughly it's going to be a 6-minute question. When you see parts B and C, it becomes a lot clearer. Right, so let's meet a client. Now, the countries in which you meet the client from, they're truly global. And to be fair, in some cases, they're made up. All right, they're made up so as not to have any bias. But here, it looks like we're going to have a UK client, Robert Kinloch. Is that Scottish? Bit of a Scottish link, perhaps in my direction, maybe. Also, we've got Patricia Marquez as well, who resides in the UK. Patricia here. Now, typically with a level 3, you can have kind of a half a page, half a screen worth of case, and you might need to scroll down a bit to get the full thing coming in there. One little tip, by the way, I'm sure you've discovered this, is it depends a lot on your exam centre as to how big their screens are. Whether your exam fits kind of, if you like, left and right next to each other, question and then the scenario, or whether you have to scroll down a bit. Depends a bit on the size of the screens, right? So the larger the screens, more likely they're going to be kind of side by side scenario and questions. So this question is a rebalancing question, and at the heart of this question, let me show you what it's all about here. It's all about the strategic asset allocation up on the top left. Remember, guys, that all the work we're doing in level 3, as far as the behavioral, understanding behavioral traits, researching our capital market expectations, all that early work is to create for the client a strategic asset allocation tailored to their IPS. So let's say that that's been done, The approach here to the corridor method is to have a target, given a target here of 60, 15 and 25 for equities, commodities and fixed income, and then to create a corridor for drift. Right, so you can define the corridor in different ways. For this particular question, we're going to define it purely adding or subtracting an absolute 5%. In the questions, they're going to be very clear about this, but let's have an absolute 5%. So that becomes a corridor of 65 and 55, for example, for equities. And so the idea behind this is that it can be very beneficial to construct a corridor. Imagine if, for example, if you had a very narrow corridor and you had very high transaction costs. Now, if you had a very narrow corridor and high transaction costs, well, you'd constantly be drifting, incurring nasty transaction costs. It would be very costly in that way. So the rule of thumb here is that the higher the transaction costs, well, the wider the corridor to avoid this problem. And conversely, the lower the transaction costs, well, you can have a narrower corridor there to better manage your strategic risk tolerance in that way. You don't want it drifting too far. Now, also, the higher the volatility of your assets in the portfolio, the quicker your portfolio can effectively jump out of its risk profile. In credit risk, we talk about jump to default being a big change. Here goes a volatility here, big jump in volatility. So the higher the volatility of your assets, the narrower the corridor to keep a check on your risk profile. Now, notice in each case, you'll need to explain why. guys. So why? So again, here for the transaction costs, the higher the transaction costs, the wider the corridor, because otherwise you would incur frequent transaction costs, which is going to bring down the expense of your portfolio. The higher the volatility, the narrower the corridor, because you want to keep to your chosen risk profile. Also, the higher the correlations in your portfolio, well, the less likely your portfolio assets will drift away from their portfolio. Guys, if they have a high correlation, when one moves, the other moves as well. So the higher the correlations, we can have a wider corridor because it's less likely your portfolio will drift away from its risk profile. So in each case, you have to explain why. Right, with that in mind, let's have a look at the question. So Kinloch and the client Marquez discuss a recent analyst report that forecasts the following changes, right? So here firstly, transaction costs for equities will decrease. Well, guys, that implies a narrower corridor, like we've just mentioned there, because we can manage the drift in a much more refined way, knowing we're not incurring too many transaction costs in that way. So the transaction costs are narrower, or less. Sorry, we can have a narrower corridor. Now the correlation here for both fixed income and equities will actually go up. Well, correlations going up implies a wider corridor because it's less likely that the asset classes will drift away. Being a higher correlation, when one moves, they'll move in a similar direction. So notice that, guys, for equities there, we have a conflict. On the one hand, with transaction costs, they're implying a narrower corridor, but with correlations implying a wider corridor. And this backs up the statement down here from Kinloch, the advisor, that the corridor width for equities cannot be determined because you've got these two conflicting approaches, guys. That you're going to have to explain that in your question shortly. Explain the impact of the two dimensions. Number one, transaction costs. Number two, correlations, giving you a different view. But when you think about commodities here, though, it is clear that if you have a higher volatility coming in, well, to keep a track on the risk profile, you want a narrower corridor. Right, so the question here, question 10A, this is from the real past morning exam from 2018. Question number 10, looking for 6 marks, 6 minutes, 6 marks. So support Kinloch's conclusions, the advisor's conclusions regarding corridor width for both equities and for commodities. So looking at 3 points each here. Now, by way of marks here, notice that I've marked out evidence and then a very brief follow-on justification. Guys, evidence and a brief justification, and oftentimes some kind of conclusion or final conclusion. Often a recommendation might be as well sometimes. So the old 1-2 we've talked about briefly in this video. The old 1-2, 1 being a case fact or evidence from the case, 2 being a follow-on justification. Also look at the formatting that we've gone here, guys. The formatting here being a bullet point sentence. Guys, it is a sentence, but it's a bullet point sentence. So for each point you make, start a new line. Now, the Institute are very clear about this on the 2021-2022 website. When they talk about discussing formats, they're very clear about it. So looking at the first one here, well, the evidence, the report, evidence comes from the report, doesn't it? The report forecasts. Well, it forecasts an increase in correlation. That's the evidence between equities and fixed income. And so the way to follow on and explain that, which means, say which means, or resulting in, which means, that both asset classes will move in sync, moving in a similar direction, which also means the chance of drifting or diverting away from their target weights is going to be less, reducing the chance of doing that. So notice the two components to your answer, guys: evidence and a justification, the old 1-2. What I'm going to say to you here is that many candidates don't know this, many candidates don't do this, many level 3 candidates just provide a fact. They might just say increased correlation. Increased correlation, they haven't actually explained that either that well at all. They're going to drop a mark, likely. For the second one here, with equity, guys, costs. The evidence reports transaction costs for equities will decrease. Guys, tapping on the evidence there. And then the brief justification, the 1-2. So reducing the cost of rebalancing, supporting a narrow corridor width, meaning as well that you can manage the corridor width a lot more accurately, and again, to the risk profile desired. Not having to have as wide corridor width, manage it a lot more to the risk profile more accurately. Overall, you've got two opposing views there. You've got the wider, and then you've got the narrower. So going to be a conclusion overall. The conclusion is correct, that the corridor width cannot be determined because of these opposing facts. Now that was part of it, 3 minutes. Notice it's quite focused. Notice it's no essays. Notice it's very focused to the case. But you've then explained things to the client well as well. Guys, we want all the marks on that one. With the commodities this time here we can provide a more straightforward conclusion based upon the evidence, because evidence here of the forecast for volatilities for commodity. Now we know commodities here are very often talked about being volatile, but it's got to be straight from the text. If you use any general knowledge, no marks. It has to be evidence right from the case. So the justification, guys, here, if the volatility is higher, much more likely there'll be divergence, could be a jump or drift. And being volatile, that can be fast. It could be quite dramatic as well. I mean, for example, a quick mention, March 2020, look at the panic in the markets at that time over the COVID. So we have got content coming in, giving you some real life, content coming and looking at the VIX. However, that's not going to help you with the CFA questions at all. CFA only want you to base your answer on the evidence in this question. And here, the forecast was based in the question. Guys, supporting the idea of a narrow corridor width. Just bringing back the slide from before, we talked about the old morning. That was the morning question 2018. They referenced the morning. For us, of course, you can do your exam any time of day. We're talking here about the constructive response, and we talked about some of the ways we can help guys on that too. Right, so we've reached the end, and we've reached the beginning, I suppose, as well. We've reached the end. I want to refer back to the beginning. How to pass level 3. I hope that the video has given you some useful information that you can take forward. From my point of view as level 3 instructor, but also as an exam instructor, that you're going to meet on different videos. Guys, I mentioned I'm a risk guy and alternatives. You'll see me in some of the videos as well, and helping you along the way. But the first thing I would say is it's you. You are the reason you're going to get your charter, much more than the material. All right, any kind of wouldn't matter what you're studying, the effort, the hours. I've made a list here of some of them, haven't I? Commitment, motivation, the drive, your enthusiasm, your dedication and focus. you know, you've made that team, you've made that Olympic team as far as the CFA program goes, and you've shown it, you've lived it, you've breathed it, you've breathed it here. Then we talked a lot about the practice, that the difference between the constructive response, making level 3 a different animal to level 2 completely. And if you don't embrace that, we need you to embrace that and to practice it, and get hold of the resources that are out there. We've got those for you, to really learn and to help you along the way there too. And also get some feedback, learn from the instructors, guys, and master the material, and master the way the exam's going to be tested too. My advice to you guys will be to keep focusing on that charter, you know, to realize it is a competition, to realize that you are competing mostly though in terms of effort. And before you know, guys, you will get them and end a chapter, I suppose, end a chapter in your life and start a new one as well. So guys, I hope to meet you on the way, and I hope you found this video a useful start in the planning process. And guys, great to be with you, and all the very best. Wish you every success in your level 3 studies.